ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Power Vacuum. I'm your host, Belmont, and we have a little bit of a development in the drug dealer simulator, Schedule 1 conflict of interest or infringement suit or whatever it's shaping up to be right now. We don't actually know. Well, we do know it's not a lawsuit. I think it was just an investigation. I saw this headline and I was like, let's talk about this from Windows Central. If we had a choice in this, we would not pursue any legal action against Schedule 1. DDS speak out developers speak out on controversy involving their publisher. Byterunner developers of Drug Dealer Simulator do not support the investigation into Schedule 1 and lay the blame with the publisher. Last week, Drug Dealer Simulator launched on Xbox for the first time, but the big news wasn't about its new platform. It was about the controversy surrounding it and Schedule 1, a game that's taken the Steam charts by storm. While Schedule 1 continues to gain massive traction, topping sales and player counts, the developers of Drug Dealer Simulator, Byterunners, have found themselves caught up in a messy situation that they didn't ask for. Excuse me. Mm, mm, mm. Got something in my throat. Despite being review bombed by Schedule 1 fans, the team has been clear that they don't feel personally harmed by the success of Schedule 1, and certainly not by the idea that their game has inspired it. The accusation of intellectual property infringement are not being pursued by Byte Runners themselves, but by their publisher, Movie Games SA, who is legally required to investigate such matters as a publicly traded company. Are they legally required? Is that, I guess, infringement would fall under hurting the bottom line, which means they do have fiduciary responsibility, but wouldn't they have to establish that infringement had occurred before? No. Well, I don't know. That's a murky territory because you can't sue before damages. You have to receive damages in order to sue. It's one of the confusing things about the American legal system and English common law, but we'll see where that goes. I don't know if it was necessary for them to do that, but if they were trying to appease the board or the shareholders, which I don't think there was a shareholder or board meeting that dropped a couple days after Drug Dealer Simulator or Schedule 1 came out, but I don't know, so I can't answer that. We have a full statement from Byte Runners. Dear fans and communities of both DDS and Schedule 1. After managing the ongoing drama on our side, analyzing the situation, listening to various opinions and feedback, and having multiple discussions both internally in the studio and with our publisher, we want to provide an update on our stance regarding the Schedule 1 infringement investigation launched by our publisher, Movie Games SA. Oh, shit. Get. We want to state that despite the fact that we do see many similarities between the games and that some aspects of Schedule 1 were probably heavily inspired by DDS, we as a developer do not feel like we are being robbed by anyone. Mind that we are not lawyers and the base and blah, blah, sorry, can't talk today. And we base the following on our personal feelings about the matter. In our opinion, Schedule 1 has its own vibe, freshness, and ideas that derive from the concept of DDS 1, but expand on it and bring them in its own shape and style. Frankly, we don't care how this relates to copyrights and fair competition laws, but we think these kinds of inspirations are abundant in game development, create and improve genres, and even if they sometimes cross a few lines, are in general a good thing for the industry and gaming as a whole. Yes, I agree with that. Did Saints Row affect the bottom line of Grand Theft Auto? No. Did Two Worlds affect the bottom line of Oblivion and Skyrim? No. It copying concepts and ideas from a game doesn't usually hurt the bottom line because most people will go play the copy and then want to go back to the original to see how different it was or because they know it was better. If anything, Copycats help reinforce an original IP, not detract from it. Historically, that's just kind of been the thing. It's very rare that a copycat or a clone of an original IP does so well that it literally overshadows and disenfranchises the original IP. That's not something that actually kind of happens. Where was I? We base our stance on our personal opinions on the matter as developers and gamers. If we had a choice in this, we would not pursue any legal action against Schedule One in any shape or form. Considering we do not own the DDS IP, that's wild. You guys created it, but you don't own it. I guess that's what happens when you sell it. Uh, we do not have direct influence over the decisions surrounding the investigation or our publisher's policy. However, we have expressed our concerns and opinions to them directly. We will actively work on voicing our stance during the investigation. We want this to end well for everyone and do not want anyone affected to face this kind of negativity, fear, or hatred. That's not how, blah. That's not why we make games, and that's not what we stand for. I mean, it's easy to say that once you're in hot water. But again, if it is the publisher making the decision, I can't really blame the developers because once you involve publishing companies, you pretty much don't own your shit anymore. Take that as a lesson to everyone out there working on indie games right now. What is going on between Schedule One and DDS? Well, we know there's an investigation. Schedule One recently hit a peak of over 450,000 concurrent players. Holy shit! Ho- Whoa! That's huge, huge for an indie game. Beating out huge AAA games. Thanks, guys. And is yet another instance of a game being released onto Steam with little to no marketing or fanfare, made by a small team, or in this case, one person, and absolutely blowing up. One person. Schedule One really made by one person? Did this guy straight up Scott Cawthorn this whole thing? Made by Tyler VGS, based in Australia, and a few collaborators for the art and music genre. Okay, there we go. He had a few collaborators. I was picturing someone doing everything themselves. The game follows a similar loop to DDS in that you start as a small time dealer with aspirations to grow a crime empire. Oh, I just glanced down and lost. Despite the cartoonish appearance of Schedule One, the game is pretty addictive, pun intended. I think a clown just died somewhere. Drug Dealer Simulator is more gritty, true to life interpretation of the subject matter made by Byterunners, a Polish studio, and published by Movie Games SA. While the publisher have outright said there is no lawsuit, they are investigating similarities between the two games, which has brought them some negative publicity from people enjoying Schedule One, resulting in some review bombing on Steam. It's impossible to ignore the uncomfortable reality that games like Schedule One are putting the game industry in a position where it's facing scrutiny like never before. The whole issue is blowing up in part because the growing chasm between indie and AAA games. Yeah, lately indie games have been better, and that used to not be the case. Indie games used to be niche. They used to be interesting and fun, but they were for a limited market. It wasn't a big, huge, broad, sweeping thing that encompassed everything. That's what AAA games did. And AAA games have just been shit lately. Schedule One is yet another example of a viral indie hit disrupting the gaming industry and its expectations of what will sell. Yeah, see, that's the thing. You cannot have preconceived notions about a game. Okay, the power of the purse dictates the market. That is always how it will be. That's always how it's going to be, and it's always how it's been. Future, present, past, the power of the purse. I don't know why games or game developers or companies or whatever the people who are fucking this up in the AAA industry, I don't know how they forgot it, but somewhere along the line they thought, oh, we can just do whatever we want, fill our game full of shit concepts and modern day politics, and it'll still sell. It's a AAA title. Wrong. Guess again. Movie Games SA might be legally obliged to investigate Schedule 1, but in doing so, they've opened a can of worms that threatens to derail the success of both games. Byterunners, the developer of DDS, are now facing unintended consequences of a decision that wasn't theirs to make. And unfortunately, the negative publicity has hurt the developers who rely on platforms like Xbox to distribute their games. Yes, that's true. It does hurt developers. Publishers and legal teams are increasingly being seen to weaponize patent infringement claims to stifle creativity, something we are also seeing happen between Nintendo and Pocket Pair against Pokemon. What? Oh, copy editor, guys. That is a poorly worded statement. When you say Nintendo and Pocket Pair against Pokemon, it makes it sound like Nintendo and Pocket Pair are teaming up against a third company. It should say uh, between Nintendo and Pal World's parent company, Pocket Pair, or between Nintendo. But I mean, something we are also seeing happen between Nintendo and the Pocket Pair company and their game Power. They should associate Pocket Pair and Power World because this statement makes it sound like Nintendo and Pocket Pair are associated, not Pocket Pair and Power World. That's my point. Warner Brothers Games famously patented the Nemesis system in Middle Earth, Shadow of Mordor, and Shadow of War, only to shut down the studio. And it is the hugest, biggest mistake. I don't care if the studio is shut down. Get off your ass, Warner Brothers executives, and mandate that every RPG you make moving forward uses the Nemesis system. Are you listening, Warner Brothers? Every RPG you make moving forward should use the Nemesis system. It is one of the best AI mechanics for reoccurring bosses or characters in a game, and you are wasting it. You're wasting your patent. I said this like a dozen times in the past. I'll probably say it a dozen more. It just enrages me that you have something so well developed and so functionally genius that you just let it sit on a shelf and rot until the patent's gonna fucking go public domain and somebody else is gonna start using it, and then the game's gonna be amazing, successful, and Warner Brothers is gonna be like, "Oh, gee, why didn't we use that?" Oh, because we're Warner Brothers and all we know how to do is make dumb fucking decisions. As you can tell, I'm pretty mad at Warner Brothers for wasting their IPs and their intellectual, and their patents. They wasted um Lord of the Rings when they had it. They're wasting Batman. It's a shame. Where was I? Um, this pattern indicates something that gamers are vehemently against, that the modern gaming ecosystem is not designed to encourage innovation, but to protect existing intellectual properties and corporate interest. Shareholders over users. Yes, that is so true. The power of the purse, people, your users and your fans make your game. They will make or break it. And the reason so many AAA games aren't being broken right now is because the fans aren't opening their purses. That's just it. What's particularly frustrating is how developers lose control over these kinds of situations once they sign deals with publishers. When you bring a publisher into the mix, you're no longer the one calling the shots. And in this case, it's a real shame because Drug Dealer Simulator and Schedule 1 should be celebrated for their innovation, not tangled up in legal battles and review bombing. Yes, that is exactly it. Do not get publishers involved if you can avoid it. Self publish, publish through marketplaces that have non binding exclusionary deals. Don't go to a publisher unless they give you some great deals and you have a lawyer come in and make an airtight contract that lets you retain the rights and the property of your IPs. Where am I? They both have such different styles that they can have two different audiences, much in the way I argue with Diablo 4 and Path to Exile too. Yeah, there's another example. Did Path to Exile hurt Diablo 3? No, it didn't. We're now seeing that these types of disputes can cause long lasting damage to the reputation of indie games and can create an environment where developers are afraid to take risks, fearing, not featuring, fearing they might become targets for legal action. The industry needs to take a hard look at how it handles IP and creativity. Otherwise, we risk losing the very heart of what makes games great, their originality. Yep. If you police everything, you will lose your originality. You will lose your incentive, your ability to come up with engaging concepts, and you'll eventually just become a machine of repetitive releases. And when your game becomes boring and repetitive, it becomes stagnant. Your audience disappears. And then the next thing is your studio shuts down. And then everyone goes, "What happened to this game? It was so great." Well, except the last one. You don't want that. You want to innovate. You want to be original. And if you keep frivolously suing people to prevent originality and innovation, you will destroy your industry. But that's all I have for this report. This is your host, Belmont, signing out.